long-run fiscal imbalance. While generational accounting summarizes how the burden of financing the government is shared across generations, it doesn't really address the central question that might interest policymakers today. If the government continues with today's policies, how much more will the government spend than it will collect in taxes over the entire future? This question was addressed in 2003 by Jagdish Kokal, one of the originators of generational accounts and Kant matters. Rather than attempting to balance the government's intertemporal budget constraint that measured how out of balance the government's intertemporal budget is, they computed what the government will spend and what it will collect in taxes in each year into the future. They then took the present discounted value of these expenditures and taxes and subtracted expenditures from taxes to get a present discounted value of the government's fiscal imbalance, how much more the government has promised in spending than it will collect in taxes. Moreover, Cockell and Smetters used more recent numbers than those used by the creators of generational accounts, reflecting the fact that in recent years the government has increased its future obligations by much more than it has increased in future tax collections. They highlighted in their work that the entire long-run fiscal imbalance of the federal government arises solely from the major entitlement programs for the elderly, Social Security, and Medicare. There is little fiscal imbalance in the remainder of government. More recently, this approach was adopted by the trustees of Medicare and Social Security funds, who in 2009 released data on the long-run fiscal imbalance of the Social Security and Medicare programs. The results are stunning. From the perspective of 2009, the fiscal imbalance of these two programs is $102 trillion. That is, if government policy does not change, the government has promised to pay out $102 trillion more in benefits than it will collect in taxes. Most of the fiscal imbalance, $88.9 trillion, comes from the Medicare program. The large imbalance caused by these programs reflects the fact that the government has not funded in advance the large benefit it will have to pay out as society ages. In the case of Medicare, this aging trend is compounded by the rapid rise in medical care costs. It is worth putting this number in perspective. This figure suggests that the implicit debt of the U.S. government, that is, the extent to which future benefit obligations exceed future tax collections, is roughly 18 times as large as its existing outstanding debt. To achieve intertemporal budget balance would require a tax increase of about 32% of payroll. This would mean nearly tripling the existing payroll tax that finances the government's social insurance programs, or more than doubling the revenue from income taxes. Eliminating all other government programs besides these large transfer programs would solve less than two-thirds of the imbalance. The U.S. government today is like a family that has 18 small children and a $15,000 balance on their credit card. The balance on the credit card is a major problem and it is causing large interest payments, but it is a trivial problem relative to the enormous fiscal burden this family will face when its children need to go to college. Moreover, this problem is getting worse at a rapid rate. In 2003 alone, the government added roughly $20 trillion to the fiscal imbalance. A quarter of this $5 trillion was the result of a series of tax reductions enacted in 2003. Most of it, over $16 trillion, was created through the addition of new entitlement to the Medicare program, a prescription drug benefit discussed in detail in Chapter 16. Each year, the fiscal imbalance grows by roughly 3 to 4% as the nation accumulates interest obligations on the existing large implicit debt.